What's going on, everybody? This is your main man, Big Ive, the talk of the town, Mr. DETVCH.com, and I have the wonderful opportunity to sit with United States Senator Chris Coons to just bring everyone in Delaware to light on where we are with what happened the other day. Senator, thank you so much for your time for sitting down here with us at DETV.
Thank you, Ivan. It's great to be home, and it's great to be back on with you.
I really appreciate you, and at least 99% of Delaware appreciate you too, and your efforts and what you've been doing. First of all, let me get to this. Are you and your staff, are you guys safe?
Yes. Look, Ivan, after the incidents in the Capitol, we had a long conversation yesterday about our safety, their safety, and I've been communicating with Senate leadership about the hearings that I think we need to have to review the security failure that led to the Capitol being stormed by an angry mob, and then the steps we're going to need to take going forward to make sure that it's safe for the inauguration of President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris, and it's a safe place to work going forward. After hundreds of millions of dollars were invested in the Capitol complex after 9/11, right, to make it more secure. I've gone to work there, week in and week out for the last 10 years, assuming that it was secure and that you couldn't just storm in. And as many of us have looked at the photos and the videos and the footage of what tragically happened Wednesday afternoon and evening, it's clear there were some basic weaknesses in planning and execution around keeping the Capitol and everybody who works there safe this week.
Yeah, from my end, when I was watching it that night, I'm counting where are the police officers? Where's security? Let me ask you, because this is for me. Do you think that it could possibly be the president actually pulled Homeland Security, everyone away from that? Or told them not to show up, because it's for a breach like that was just, really couldn't. It's something you see in a movie, you know what I mean? And we have Congress, that's down there, and we saw Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester, in fear, but also praying. We saw, other Congress people in fear. Do you think that it could possibly be and I wouldn't put it past the president to pull all forces back, and say, hey, don't even answer the call or go down there?
Look, Ivan, while I was sheltering in place with about 80 other senators after they had evacuated us and the vice president from the Senate chamber, there was a few chaotic moments there where I was talking to a captain of the Capitol Police saying, it seems clear to me you are totally overwhelmed and under-resourced. I had gotten texts from law enforcement leaders, elected leaders, friends of mine, saying, do you need or want additional resources? And I said to him, are you looking for the National Guard or for law enforcement from the surrounding counties and states? And he said, I am. I don't know about who's in charge here.
Right.
And we ended up having a series of urgent conversations with Republican senators who were trying to get the National Guard in DC deployed to the Capitol to help restore order, to help take back control of the Capitol. And as you may have read in press accounts, there was some uncertainty, difficulty with President Trump initially resisting that. Look, that's the point of having hearings and an investigation into exactly what happened.
Right.
But frankly, part of why I've joined many of my colleagues in calling on President Trump to resign, or on Vice President Pence and the cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment, or on the House to begin impeachment proceedings, whatever it takes to move President Trump out of office for the remaining 13 days.
Yeah.
I'm saying all of that because it seems clear to me that President Trump organized and instigated this, that he called on his supporters from around the country to fly in, drive in, take the train into Washington, assemble in front of the White House, where he came out and spoke to this mob of thousands, got them all fired up and told them to go to the Capitol and try and interfere with the counting of the Electoral College ballots.
Right.
This isn't just a protest. This isn't just the president saying, I'm mad about something and I want my supporters to take to the streets. He used specific language about being rough.
Yeah.
This organization, the group of organizations that pulled this protest together said it would be wild. And President Trump, even after President-elect Biden went on national television and called on him, urged him to demand that his supporters leave the Capitol and back off, President Trump wouldn't do that and didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
It was only hours later,
Right.
after 4 people had died, and now we know a Capitol police officer had been grievously injured and has now died from his injuries. It was only after all this mayhem and chaos and needless loss of life had happened that President Trump grudgingly recorded something in which he said both, my supporters should pull back from the Capitol, and you're great and I love you. I mean, this is as close to a coup attempt as we've had in American history, where a sitting president spends 2 months indulging himself in the fantasy that he won an election that he lost, gins up 70 million Americans, gets them all angry by feeding them a bunch of lies, even when his own Attorney General, Bill Barr, says there's no evidence of widespread fraud.
Right.
His own Homeland Security Director of Cyber Security, responsible for election security, testified no evidence of widespread cyber intrusions. He got fired for that, by the way.
Yeah.
After all this, I look back at these 2 months since the election and say, we're in the worst days of this pandemic ever.
Right.
And President Trump is traveling, golfing, and tweeting rather than leading our country's response to the pandemic. And he's the one who ginned up and shot at the Capitol that angry mob. And as a result, he's lost any right to continue as president of the United States. And so I've been urging that we take action to remove him and to make our country safe in the next 2 weeks.
What is that likelihood of impeachment or him being, with him resigning? What do you think that is? Because like you said,
I don't
13
know.
days left.
I'll tell you frankly, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which is a very conservative editorial board, published an editorial calling for President Trump to resign, saying it was in the country's best interest and his best interest for him to simply move along. Trump just earlier today announced he will refuse to attend the inauguration. The fastest and most direct thing that could happen would be for Vice President Pence to invoke the 25th Amendment. That would make him acting president immediately.
Wow.
Or for President Trump to resign, which would make Vice President Pence president immediately. Impeachment will take more time than we have, really,
Right.
because realistically, the House has to reconvene, hold hearings, actually take an impeachment vote, refer it to the Senate. The Senate would have to return, conduct a trial, and then take a vote. And honestly, in 13 days, I don't see all of that happening.
Right. On the world stage, the United States, again, is on the world stage. What do we look like to our allies and even our enemies right now?
Well, one of the hardest parts of processing the events of Wednesday and Wednesday night for me was hours later, once we concluded our business, which was important for us to do. We returned to the Senate and House chambers. We conducted peacefully the certification of the election. And ultimately, Vice President Pence, about 4:00 in the morning on Thursday, declared Joe Biden and Kamala Harris the president-elect and the vice president-elect. After all that, I went back and read through the texts I'd gotten. The foreign secretary of the United Kingdom, the ambassador from France, ambassadors from other countries had reached out to me to express their concern, their solidarity. There were public statements by the presidents and prime ministers of dozens of our allies expressing their concern. But there were also some opportunistic gloating statements by leaders from Russia, from China, from dozens of other countries saying that the United States is clearly a flawed democracy, that we have no standing in the world to question or criticize them on their human rights records or on their commitment to democracy. I'll remind you, just within recent weeks, China rounded up and arrested all of the pro-democracy leaders from Hong Kong, finally shutting down what has been a year of protest in Hong Kong against China's very heavy-handed suppression of democracy there. They took great delight in pointing out that a mob stormed our capital and that we have no basis on which to lecture them about democracy and human rights. This has weakened us demonstrably in the world.
How do we repair that? How do we repair our reputation, Senator?
First, it's my hope that Republican senators will join Democratic senators, members of Congress of both parties in both chambers, at the inauguration on January 20th. Mm-hmm. I hope that Vice President Pence will join President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris at the inauguration, because that visual image of the peaceful transfer of power from one party to another, one administration to another, is a big part of what has sustained us. This will be our first transition in American history where there was an incident of this type, an attempt to interfere with it, and a refusal to participate by the outgoing president in combination. I think we have a great opportunity, because in Joe Biden, we have someone committed to democracy and human rights, someone who has served for 36 years in the Senate, 8 years as vice president. And we have in our Secretary of State and Secretary of Defense and others who are now just nominees but will soon be confirmed, the opportunity to reach out and engage our allies around the world. But bluntly, Ivan, we also have to have a national conversation. Right. This has been a year of protest. Protests against police violence and racial inequality, and protests by those on the far right who oppose making progress on racial injustice and inclusion, and those who continue to believe President Trump's conspiracy theories about how he actually won. We need to come together as a nation. Joe Biden ran on bringing us together as a nation. He was elected, I think, in no small part because of how he talks about being a president for all Americans. Now we're going to have to do the hard work of listening to each other, respecting each other, and coming back together.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations that need to be had right now. As a black man, Senator, seeing the images, Confederate flags, and walking across the floor, at the Capitol, from a noose being outside, right? Like the fear of a lot of black and brown people right now, like we see. And I'm talking from our perspective, we see like right now that and we've been living the injustice, the racial injustice of America, right? And we understand that, yes, there are two Americas right now. Like, can you speak a little bit on that, or even repairing that? Because we right now see that there are 70 million people, right, that don't like us, that want to go back to the times where we was 3/5 of a man. Right. So when we just don't, when we watched in horror as the Capitol, right, being stormed, and then months prior, a peaceful protest of the president of the United States of America going out for a photo op, and those innocent people, black and white, right, being beaten and being drugged through the street and tear gas. It's like right now, we understand that fear is a good thing, is a way that people can get controlled, right? Be controlled. But right now, of seeing those Trump supporters running in there, and not just running in there to hopefully change a vote, but say, I'm going to leave this behind to let you know, like, blacks, Hispanics, Asian, Indians, like, we don't want you. That's a conversation. Do you believe that that's a conversation we need to have?
Yes. And one of the things that gave me, that reminded me of why I am so excited for Joe Biden to become president, is that rather than just watching all of this passively, he also came out and here on the stage of the Queen Theater in Wilmington, Delaware, said pointedly, watching this riot in the Capitol, I could not help but think, if this had been a Black Lives Matter protest, the police would have been far more aggressive and far better prepared and equipped to maintain order. These images of police officers, sort of helping people who have just finished sacking and storming and vandalizing the Capitol, sort of helping them down the steps and taking selfies with them. And some are arguing there is an image about police like literally opening the barricades and letting them in. That's the point of having hearings and an investigation into what happened at the Capitol, is to not just understand the security consequences, but the inequality between the heavily militarized, aggressive response on Lafayette Square and to the Black Lives Matter protests of the summer, and the seemingly light and inappropriate response. If someone's just finished smashing windows and statues and desks and tearing up the Capitol and running around, you don't just help them leave politely.
Right.
You zip tie them and you say, you're under arrest.
Right.
One of the things that has to happen is for the FBI and federal law enforcement to investigate, hold accountable, and arrest the folks who committed crimes on Capitol grounds. Mm-hmm. They have already arrested 70 people. They have put out digitally a most wanted series of posts about the folks who were doing the most damage. Mm-hmm. But I'll remind you, pipe bombs were left behind at the RNC and DNC. Property was smashed and people were terrorized and a police officer was killed. So, I mean, this was not some peaceful protest that just went a little astray.
Right.
We do need to have a conversation about what does it mean for us to have a president and a vice president, where that vice president is the daughter of a South Asian immigrant, is both black and brown, and is someone who has been a real leader in the Senate of the United States and statewide in California. What does it mean to have tens of millions of Americans reject Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as having been duly elected? Mm-hmm. And then going forward, one of the things we don't yet know is how will President Trump, as former President Trump, and his supporters respond to and interact with the Biden-Harris administration. Right. I think we have a chance to give those Republicans who are willing to disavow all these actions an opportunity to have a conversation. Because if we just keep fighting each other endlessly and saying, we're right, you're wrong, we will not survive as a democracy and we will not move forward as a country. But that Joe Biden went on national television and said, I see a clear difference between how protesters were treated in Lafayette Square and how these protesters are being treated. And it's a difference rooted in race. That he calls it out is an important step forward.
Yeah, that night Black Twitter was on fire. They were people. Black Twitter was basically saying, like, come on, y'all don't see this, like don't talk to me about Kaepernick no more, and we got white men and white women running into the Capitol, like in offices, right? Yeah. I want to also talk about the national security real quick, like the papers and things that were stolen out of offices, like. What do we do with what should we do with that from that standpoint, because there are world secrets that were taken.
You should not be able to go into the office of the Speaker of the House and sit at the desk and rifle through the papers and look at the computer and then just waltz out, because we've got 8 people in the Congress who have access to the highest level secrets of our nation. Right. And access to those secrets happens through their offices and their communications equipment. I don't know whether the rioters, the mob that invaded the Capitol, actually stole documents and information that compromised our national security. But we should assume they did. Right. And frankly, the other message that we just sent to the world is, if you mean harm to the United States, it's just not that hard to get into the Capitol complex and root around and look at what you want. Yeah. So we've got a real reckoning here, both to hold accountable the folks who thought this was all just Instagram, that this was just some day in the park. One of the things, Ivan, that I just found most astonishing was the picture of the guy who has taken Nancy Pelosi's podium, and he's walking through the rotunda, and he's going,
yeah,
like I'm taking a souvenir. Like somehow this is just, I just sort of tore it off the wall, and I'm going to walk out with it.
It was, Senator, we know mindset, right? The mindset of check this out, of breaking into the Capitol, right, by force, and breaking in windows and stealing things, but yet they walked through the red rope, right? I'm going to just take it's cool. Like our president said, it's cool to do this. It's cool. And I think that a lot of Americans are waiting right now to see what happens, because just like, a lot of deaths in the Black community, in the Black and brown community, you give it 2 weeks and then everyone tries to forget about it. We are hoping that the United States, that they don't forget about what happened, and that we want to see these people brought to justice. And I know you got a lot to do today, so I'm not going to hold you. I want to just ask you one more question: is what can you tell the people of Delaware, right, to reassure them, in this time?
I can tell you three things. First, that you're represented by people in Congress who see you, hear you, care about you, and are rooted in Delaware. Second, that our democracy will come through this stronger than ever. That I am confident Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will be sworn in as the next president and vice president of the United States, and that there will be accountability for the chaos and the violence and the thuggery that unfolded Wednesday night. And last, that we will go back to a trajectory of progress that'll include hard looks here in Delaware and in our country at what's happened in this past year, and that'll restore some of that damaged confidence that we have. Look, this is an imperfect nation and an imperfect system, and I've known that my whole life. This last year has featured month after month of people saying, when will we be heard? I think starting early now in 2021, we will see the fruit of all of that action. I am so excited to be joined by John Ossoff and Reverend Raphael Warnock, and to be serving for the first time in 6 years in a Senate where Democrats are in the majority, where Senator Tom Carper will be chairman of one of the most powerful committees. I will be chairman of one of the most difficult committees to run. And we will have an opportunity to make history and make progress. It will not be easy, but we will get back on a track where I recognize that the challenges that are in front of us, that all of us live and know about, begin to get addressed. So I am optimistic about 2021.
Yeah. Well, Senator, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Also want to give a beautiful thank you and Godspeed to Senator Tom Carper. And you had a press conference yesterday. About
yes, we did.
That if you're watching, you can actually hit the link below and see the entire press conference. DETV was there, and Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. We appreciate everything that you wonderful people are doing. Again, Senator, thank you so much, and God be with you.
Thank you, and you as well. God bless. Thanks, Ivan.
Thanks. You're watching Ivan Thomas and DETVCH.com. Go there, check out all our interviews that we got going on for the wonderful state of Delaware, because this is the state that we love. All right, I'll see you on the other end.